You can have it printed on posters.
Yes, you can.
Like your
So you created a Palestine telephone line, you created .ps internet, but all of those actually went through Israel, okay? And in fact, the whole thing was a big guise, so to speak, and the Gaza genocide actually very much shows that.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. We start with pictures of heroes, people who are taking part in the next flotilla to Gaza. As you know, their ship, the Conscience, was attacked by Israeli drones and disabled. Now there's a new effort with this vessel, the Madleen. These people are taking part in the new effort to sail to Gaza with desperately needed food and supplies. They are risking death. 15 years ago, Israelis killed 10 aboard the Mavi Marmara, a Turkish ship that was bringing aid to Gaza during the first flotilla. There is some good news with respect to the case of Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University graduate who was abducted by ICE. A federal judge ruled that the grounds given for deportation by the government, that Khalil would harm U.S. foreign policy, was unconstitutionally vague. The judge did not immediately free Khalil, however, letting Trump's administration's claim that Khalil withheld information on his permanent residency application be further examined. Demonstrations for Khalil and the other immigrants being grabbed by ICE need to continue. Go to peace.org and find ways that you might help in the campaign to free Mahmoud Khalil and to stop Rubio from using the claim that the U.S. is being invaded. We can't imagine the pain of Dr. Ala al-Najjar. She was working in a partially destroyed Al-Nasser hospital when she learned that the Israeli Air Force bombed her home and killed 9 of her children. Their blackened bodies were brought to the hospital where she worked. The names of the children were Yahya, 12, Eve, 9, Rival, 5, Sadine, 3, Rakan, 10, Rustan, 7, Gibran, 8, Lukman, 2, and Sadar, not yet 1 year old. Actually, none of the remains of Sadar could be found. The Israeli army lied that they were fighting terrorists in the area, and they claim that the claim regarding harm to uninvolved civilians is under review. An old Yiddish curse is appropriate here. You've probably seen this image, a little Palestinian girl walking past an area engulfed with flames. Her name is Ward Al-Sheikh Khalil. Corporate media happily reports she survived, but her 5 siblings between ages of 18 and 2 were killed in the strike along with their mother in the bombing of a school used to house refugees. As a tiny act of solidarity, you might want to change your Facebook profile to the picture of the little girl walking by the flames. I regret to inform you that Gaza's Anne Frank has been murdered. Her name was Yaqeen Hammad. She wasn't a diarist like Anne Frank, but a social media influencer. The Independent of Britain reports 11-year-old Yaqeen Hammad reached tens of thousands with her social media videos, which focused on supporting the Gaza community by helping to distribute clothing and toys to orphans. It's unclear if she was targeted or just another victim of general Israeli mass killings. I'll be speaking in New York City on Saturday, June 7th at 5 p.m. Honored to be part of a panel with Amaya Gilman and Rabbi Andrew Kahn. We'll be talking about a subject I've been studying for decades, Zionist groups and their betrayal of Jews. For more information and to register, scan this QR code or contact me at mail@thestruggle.org. Now some coverage of the protest of Homeland Security Director Kristi Noem as she came to the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut on May 21st. She's a very aggressive point person in Trump's demand to deport or imprison immigrants and those against genocide. These are some of the signs people carried.
You can have it printed on poster.
Yes, you can.
Like your...
Something different.
He can't sing.
And he said, Bruce can't sing. He's never gonna sing.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
The Coast Guard deserves better! Yeah!
Congratulations.
We really support the Coast Guard. London supports the Coast Guard. I'm saying better! Toast! Hello!
You know what? Yeah.
Right. I saw that. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah. Like
So, your first 2 years, you can withdraw at any time, no time.
Because she studied I think it was the
It's like a sweatshirt.
State.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So you're kind of looking to slide from here to here?
yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Especially with the degree, we're always looking to hire new people. So we're always
Registration requirements.
Yeah.
And
They got
Hello.
Oh, okay.
How are you?
We need a woman commandant again.
Oh, no,
They
yeah.
got rid of her. It's fine. It's fine.
Free Mahmoud Easter.
That makes sense.
Thank you.
A few days ago, a Palestinian-American physician spoke at the Palestine Museum, U.S. Dr. Kuemmerle spoke on medical aspects of what's happening in Gaza. She is one of the founders of Doctors Against Genocide. She was supposed to talk at Quinnipiac College, but the administration said she couldn't come to the school because the subject was too, quote, political, unquote. So she spoke at the museum. Her talk is up on the YouTube channel Palestine Museum US, and we urge you to watch all of it. After the event was over, I talked to Dr. Kuemmerle about one thing she mentioned: genocide sickness. Dr. Kuemmerle, you gave a talk at the Palestine Museum US about various aspects of genocide and what it means for doctors and medical personnel. And one thing you talked about was genocide sickness. I don't think that's a term many people are familiar with. Could you talk about that?
So it is, being sick from genocide is a term that describes the feelings and the mental health symptoms that people experience when they witness a genocide unfolding in front of their eyes without being able to do anything about it. It is a human nature to protect and a human nature to avoid injury. And when we see images of children being decimated one after another, when we see buildings destroyed on top of the people who are living in them, it creates a moral injury. And this moral injury can manifest with symptoms of losing joy in life, feeling that life is meaningless, having anxiety, having trouble falling asleep, having trouble engaging in daily activities, feeling sluggish, feeling slowed down, and feeling unable to cope.
And so many people in Gaza and in West Bank.
I mean, the people in Gaza are experiencing the genocide itself, but for us who are watching from outside,
I see.
we are feeling these feelings of helplessness, feeling this, completely withdrawn from normal life activities, like not being able to enjoy what we once enjoyed before. And we call that sick from genocide symptoms.
And obviously you don't take a pill to get rid of it.
The way to get rid of it is to actually organize to end genocide, to become proactive, to be in community of people who are working towards the same end, which is protect people, protect children, protect civilians, and end the genocide. Because as long as there is a genocide being in front of our eyes, it is impossible to feel normal.
And your organization is called?
Doctors Against Genocide.
Jewish Voice for Peace recently had its national membership meeting in Baltimore. After the museum event, I spoke to Shelly, Altman, and Susan Bramhall, both leaders in Jewish Voice for Peace New Haven, who also attended the Baltimore meeting. I understand you took part in the national membership meeting of Jewish Voice for Peace in Baltimore. Could you say some things about it?
Sure. There were about 2,000 attendees. It's the first national membership meeting that JVP has had since 2017 because the pandemic and other factors got in the way of it. But the convention or the membership meeting was basically broken into a bunch of plenary sessions in which a lot of some folks like Naomi Klein and Noura Erakat and Representative Rashida Tlaib spoke, as well as Angela Davis. But there were also dozens of workshops that were conducted by members of JVP and people in the movement.
Go ahead.
There were actually hundreds of workshops. There were 7 slots of an hour and a half, I think, and there were about 18 to 20 to choose from in every slot. It was really hard to choose. It was all basically people sharing actions or campaigns or projects that they had done and giving, sharing materials on how to replicate them. It was fantastic.
And also the workshops covered a range of areas. So some of them were focused on the actual projects that we're working on, but a lot of them were focused on what the challenges are in doing the organizing in this movement. And so, for example, how we work within our formations or across our formations within JVP, but also how we work in the movement with other movements, such as gender rights and climate and trans issues, and so Native American groups. So it was how all those groups can work together and what the challenges are in doing that.
Now, the opinions of Jewish Voice for Peace at one time were just so far out of the mainstream, but here 2,000 people coming. I mean, that's quite impressive.
And that's the people who could actually make it, and they provided financial support for people who couldn't, so that every chapter and the smaller formations were able to send leaders. So it was just it was extraordinary for everybody to be together, and the people you just get to rub shoulders with. We were in a bubble. We were for 4 days. It was remarkable.
Any disputes? Were there resolutions that were voted on that were contested?
No, there wasn't anything like that. It was more presentations and discussions, certainly, but it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't a shareholders meeting.
Last question. We were concerned, people who didn't go. We read that some people in the Baltimore community, self-styled leaders, took out an ad saying, we don't want JVP in Baltimore, etc. And they even called a demonstration against the JVP membership meeting. What happened?
Well, it was the day before. There was word that this was going to happen. It got passed around, and the leadership of the convention, the organizers, had been very clear from the beginning that they didn't want to engage with any kind of protest, and so they were very emphatic about that. Everybody came in on that morning from the entrances that were connected to the hotels, so they didn't come through the front doors where the demonstration was supposed to be, and there were there were these 20 workshops going on that morning, and it turned out, because the only way to know what was happening was basically to ask somebody if they'd seen anybody. It turned out there were about 6 people outside to hold signs and say that Jewish Voice for Peace isn't welcome in Baltimore, and there were 2,000 of us inside.
Let me say one more thing about that. At the first session on Thursday night, Stephanie Fox was the first speaker. Stephanie is the executive director of Jewish Voice for Peace. And in her welcome message, she said, it's quite possible that there are people here, sitting here right in this room right now, who don't agree with us, who are, infiltrators or, trying to, not on board with us. And she said, welcome. We are glad you're here. We hope you will take our message, listen to us, and bring it back to the folks that you work with. We are on the right side of history, and we invite you to join us.
The fact that ultra-right-wing Jews couldn't muster any kind of demonstration against the JVP meeting is quite a good sign. It shows while the right wing has the money and influence, the Jewish people as a whole are getting wise to their scam. We continue now with more of the talk by Palestinian-American political analyst Toufiq Haddad in New Haven several weeks ago.
I wanted to start with the first part of my little triad where I said responsibilities, dilemmas, and opportunities. First being, of course, the responsibilities. It was referred to in the beginning by the Hind. And I think it's obvious. I mean, I don't need to say anything more. And you've already taken the time out of your day to come to this and to see. You obviously recognize a kind of responsibility to understand and to see where we can take things. Obviously, the responsibility is particular. It's a human one. It's one as Americans. It's one as taxpayers. It's one as folks who provide for things done in our name as Americans with our tax money. Israel, of course, has been the largest cumulative recipient of American international aid to the tune of $310 billion since its founding. Per annum, it gets around $3.5 to $4 billion. Since the genocide began, we're talking, according to statistics from Brown, it's in the range of $18 or $20 billion. In addition to another $8.8 billion that was put up on the block just last month, I believe. And when Bernie Sanders tried to get it voted upon, only 14 out of 100 senators basically resisted or said no. So what we're talking about when we're talking about responsibility is a bipartisan responsibility, at least from the centers of power and those who supposedly represent Americans. But it's not just a political responsibility, it's also a corporate responsibility, I would argue. And here I'm not just talking about the typical arms dealers of Northrop Grumman and Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, etc. But we're also talking about a new set of actors, like in terms of the big high-tech players who have entered into the scene and are very much entangled in this whole new forms of warfare. We're talking about Microsoft and Amazon and Google, who have all provided different forms of high-tech facilitation, the full extent of which we do not know, but we also are probably very keenly aware that these are part and parcel of new forms of big brothers, so to speak, surveillance technologies and what do they call it? The different kinds of cloud technologies that are being used to, and artificial intelligence. And very much so we see high-tech capital looking towards Israel as this sort of research and development hub that they can benefit from. Because in many respects, the occupied territories for many years were, of course, are and have been a captive population. It's pretty obvious. And in fact, the last 30 years, a large part of my book was about basically trying to understand. But for years, there never used to be statistics on the occupied territories. They all used to be subsumed under Israel's statistics of Judea and Samaria. They didn't parse the OPT as separate from Israel, because they didn't recognize it. After the first Intifada, they were kind of forced into creating the autonomy areas, the Area A's, where the Palestinian Authority would be created, and that created a syntactical sort of differentiation of Palestine, okay, like in a nomenclatural sense. So you created a Palestine telephone line, you created .ps internet, but all of those actually went through Israel. okay? And in fact, the whole thing was a big guise, so to speak. And the Gaza genocide actually very much shows that today. In fact, the peace process acted as a kind of, by the end of the peace process, everyone was very clear that that was a kind of apartheid that had developed. And from that apartheid that was created through the peace process, it enabled the genocide to take place. Had Palestinians and Israelis really, the previous dynamics and the entanglement and the singular regime over both Palestinians and Israelis been maintained as it had before the peace, there's no way that the genocide would have been able to happen. There was no borders around Gaza in 1994, right? In fact, it was the peace process that created the borders, right? The first border was in 1994 that they put around Gaza. Then they built another one in 2002. And then they built the super fancy one in 2018 with billions of dollars. And that's the one that Hamas demolished on October the thing. In any case, and Gaza since then, that was all to simply make the point that, you know, Gaza has been this sort of frontier laboratorial space where high-tech sort of regimes of surveillance and control have been exercised, which is of great importance to population management, which Western countries and the United States is also very keen. So that brings up the sort of link with the corporate interests of the U.S. But it's not just a political responsibility, nor is it just a corporate responsibility. It goes to the next level in the United States, at least. I mean, we're talking about, you know, you can buy settlement property on the internet in this country. You know, you can, many of the charities which go to fund settlements and overtly racist, fascistic, Jewish supremacist agendas in the West Bank are organized out of the United States, out of Philadelphia.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.